The two empty chairs in the front row stared back at me like open wounds. White folding chairs with small bouquets of pink roses tied to their backs, Zara's favorite flowers. I had reserved them for my parents, Robert and Patricia Johnson. The funeral director had asked 3 times if he should remove them. "They're coming," I kept saying. "They'll be here." But as the pastor spoke about my 8-year-old daughter's bright smile and love for butterflies, those chairs remained empty. My sister Brianna's chair stayed empty too. 3 seats that should have been filled by the people who claimed to love Zara most. I stood there in my black dress, feeling like I was drowning in a sea of faces I barely recognized. Neighbors, teachers, parents from Zara's soccer team, they all came. People who had known my daughter for months showed up, but her own grandparents couldn't be bothered. Jake, my ex-husband, stood beside me. We might have ended our marriage 2 years ago, but losing Zara brought us together in this horrible moment. His hand touched my shoulder as they lowered the tiny casket into the ground. 8 years old. Leukemia had stolen her so fast, we barely had time to process it. "I'm sorry," Jake whispered. "I'm so sorry they didn't come." The service ended and people started walking away. Some hugged me, said kind words about Zara. Others just nodded and left quickly, uncomfortable with death and grief. I stood by the grave until only Jake and I remained. My phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Who texts someone at their child's funeral? But something made me look. "Mom, we need to talk about Zara's trust fund. Brianna needs it for her wedding deposits. The venue requires $50,000 by tomorrow. Call us." I stared at the message. My daughter was in the ground for exactly 37 minutes, and my mother was texting about money. My hands shook as I showed Jake the phone. His face went white, then red with anger. "Are you kidding me?" he said. "Today? They're asking for money today?" Another message came through. "Dad, Simone, this is important. The trust can be accessed now that Zara is gone. We're her grandparents and we know she'd want her aunt to have a beautiful wedding. Stop being selfish." Selfish. The word hit me like a slap. I was selfish for not wanting to hand over my dead daughter's money at her funeral. Jake took the phone from my trembling hands. "Don't answer them. Not today. Not ever if you ask me." But I knew my parents. They wouldn't stop. The trust fund had been set up when Zara was born, funded by Jake's grandfather's estate. Nearly $1 million meant for Zara's college, her future, her dreams. Dreams that would never happen now. Where are they? I asked the empty air. Why didn't they come? I thought about Zara asking about her grandparents in the hospital. "When are Grandma and Grandpa coming to visit?" she'd asked during her last week. They'd made excuses. Too busy. Dad's back was acting up. Mom had a hair appointment she couldn't miss. A hair appointment. While their granddaughter was dying. I knelt by the fresh grave and placed my hand on the dirt. "I won't let them take your money, baby girl. I promise." My phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. "Answer it," Jake said. "Tell them exactly what you think." I accepted the call. "Simone? Finally. Listen, we need you to come to the bank tomorrow morning. We've already talked to a lawyer, and since you're clearly not thinking straight with grief, we can help manage Zara's trust. It's sitting there doing nothing now, and Brianna's wedding." "You didn't come," I interrupted. "You didn't come to your granddaughter's funeral." Silence on the other end. "Simone, sweetie, we couldn't handle it. You know how we are with situations like that. But we're thinking about what's best for the family now. Zara would want." "Don't you dare tell me what Zara would want." My voice came out stronger than I felt. "She's been in the ground for less than an hour. That's exactly why you can't make good decisions right now. You're emotional. We'll handle the financial aspects while you grieve." The line went dead. I stood in the cemetery, surrounded by headstones and the smell of fresh dirt. Jake put his arm around me. "They planned this," I whispered. "They knew she was going to die and they planned this." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. They have a lawyer already? They've researched the trust access? Normal people don't do that while their granddaughter is in the hospital." The truth started sinking in like ice water in my veins. While I was holding Zara's hand during chemotherapy, my parents were figuring out how to get her money. While I was reading her bedtime stories in the hospital, they were planning their cash grab. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo message from my Aunt Carol. The image showed my parents and Brianna at some fancy hotel bar. They were holding champagne flutes, smiling and toasting. The timestamp showed it was taken 2 hours ago, during Zara's funeral. The message read, "Saw this on Brianna's Instagram. Thought you should know." They weren't just absent. They were celebrating while I buried my daughter. The photo haunted me all night. I kept staring at it, zooming in on their faces. My mother wore a bright red dress, the same one she'd claimed was too fancy for the funeral last week when we talked about what to wear. My father looked relaxed and happy, his arm around Brianna, who was holding up her left hand to show off a ring. An engagement ring. I called Jake at 6 in the morning. They were at Brianna's engagement party, I said without saying hello. While we buried Zara, they were celebrating. What? Check Brianna's Instagram. She got engaged yesterday and had a party at the Ritz-Carlton. Mom and Dad were there, toasting with champagne while we threw dirt on their granddaughter's casket. I heard Jake moving around, probably grabbing his phone. Then silence. Jesus, he whispered. There are like 20 photos. They look so happy. I had spent the night scrolling through every single post. Brianna in a white dress, showing off a massive diamond ring. My parents beaming in the background. Everyone raising glasses for toasts. The captions talked about new beginnings and the happiest day of my life. Look at the timestamps, I told Jake. The party started at 2 o'clock. The exact time we were at the cemetery. My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing on my porch with coffee cups and serious expressions. They're here, I told Jake. Don't let them in. But I opened the door anyway. I needed to hear what they had to say. Simone, sweetie, Mom said, pushing past me into the living room. We brought coffee. We need to discuss some things. Dad followed her in, already pulling papers from a briefcase. We've been thinking all night about the best way to handle Zara's trust. The lawyer says. You were at a party yesterday, I said. They both stopped moving. Mom's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. What party? She asked. I showed them the photo from Aunt Carol. Mom's face went white then red. We only stopped by for a few minutes, she stammered. Brianna needed our support for her big announcement. During my daughter's funeral. The funeral was in the morning, Dad said, like that made it better. This was later. We couldn't just abandon your sister on such an important day. I stared at him. Couldn't abandon her? But you could abandon me? That's different, Mom snapped. Funerals are depressing. They don't help anyone. But Brianna's engagement is a celebration of life and love. It's what families do, support each other's happy moments. Happy moments? My voice was getting louder. While I was grieving your granddaughter? Dad opened his briefcase and spread papers on my coffee table. This is exactly what we mean. You're too emotional to think clearly. Look at these trust documents. Almost $1 million just sitting there. Zara can't use it now, but Brianna can use it to start her new life. I looked at the papers. Bank statements, legal documents, all showing Zara's trust fund balance. $947,382.17. How did you get these? I asked. The lawyer helped us request them. As Zara's grandparents, we have certain rights. No, you don't. We do if you're declared mentally incompetent due to grief. The words hung in the air like poison. I felt Jake's warnings echoing in my head from the night before. They weren't just asking for money. They were planning to take control. You want to have me declared incompetent? Mom reached over and patted my hand. It's just temporary, sweetheart. Until you're thinking more clearly. We'll handle everything, the trust, the legal issues, all of it. You just focus on getting better. And Brianna gets the money. Brianna gets what she needs for her wedding, Dad corrected. The venue alone is $200,000. The dress is $15,000. Flowers, music, catering, it all adds up. This trust can give her the wedding of her dreams. I picked up one of the documents. It was a petition for emergency guardianship. My name was listed as mentally incapacitated due to severe depression and grief. They had already filled it out. When did you prepare this? I asked. Yesterday morning, Dad said. Before the funeral. Before the funeral. While I was getting dressed to bury my daughter, they were filing papers to steal her money. My phone rang. It was Brianna. Answer it, Mom urged. She wants to talk to you about the wedding plans. I declined the call. Simone, you're being ridiculous, Dad said. This money can do so much good. Brianna found the perfect venue in Napa Valley. She's already put down deposits, counting on this trust. If you don't release the funds, you'll ruin her wedding. Good. Mom gasped. How can you say that? She's your sister. She celebrated her engagement during my daughter's funeral. That was a coincidence, Mom said. Her boyfriend proposed Friday night. They didn't plan it to happen this week. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up Brianna's Instagram. There were photos going back 3 weeks showing wedding dress shopping, venue tours, and cake tastings. She's been planning this wedding for weeks, I said, showing them the photos. Look at these dates. She was trying on dresses while Zara was in the ICU. Dad waved dismissively. So what? Life goes on. That's healthy. She can't put her whole life on hold because your daughter got sick. The casual way he said it, your daughter got sick. Like cancer was a cold that would pass. Get out, I said. Simone, be reasonable. Get out of my house. Take your papers, take your coffee, and leave. Mom stood up, suddenly angry. Fine. But you're making a huge mistake. That money is wasted on a dead child. At least Brianna can use it for something meaningful. The slap happened before I even realized I'd moved. My palm stung and Mom's cheek turned bright red. How dare you, she whispered. How dare I? I was shaking with rage. How dare you call my daughter meaningless? How dare you skip her funeral for champagne? How dare you come here with legal papers to steal her money? Dad grabbed Mom's arm. We're leaving. But this isn't over, Simone. We'll be back with court orders if necessary. They gathered their papers and stormed out. Through the window, I watched them get in their car and drive away. My phone was buzzing with texts from Brianna. Mom told me what happened. You're being so selfish. Zara is gone, but I'm still here. I need this money for my future. The venue needs payment by Friday or I lose my deposit. Why are you trying to ruin my wedding? I turned off my phone and sat on my couch, staring at the coffee stains my parents had left on the table. In less than 24 hours, I'd lost my daughter and discovered my family's true nature. But I wasn't going to let them win. The knock on my door came at 7 in the morning, exactly 3 days after my parents' visit. Through the peephole, I saw 2 people in suits, a man with a briefcase and a woman with a clipboard. Miss Simone Johnson? The woman asked when I opened the door. Yes. I'm Sarah Martinez from Child and Family Services, and this is attorney Greg Foster. We have some concerns about your mental health that require immediate attention. My blood went cold. What concerns? May we come in? I let them into my living room, the same space where my parents had spread their papers 3 days earlier. Attorney Foster opened his briefcase and pulled out official-looking documents. We've received reports that you're suffering from severe depression and are making irrational decisions regarding your deceased daughter's estate. Reports from who? Your parents, Robert and Patricia Johnson, filed these concerns yesterday. They've provided medical evidence and witness statements indicating you're not capable of managing your financial affairs. I stared at the papers he handed me. There were medical records with my name on them, showing visits to doctors I'd never seen. Diagnosis: severe depression, anxiety disorder, suicidal ideation. Treatment: recommended psychiatric hospitalization. These are fake, I said. I've never seen these doctors. The records show appointments over the past month, Ms. Martinez said gently. It's common for people in severe grief to forget appointments or deny treatment. I'm not denying anything. These appointments never happened. Attorney Foster pulled out more papers. We also have statements from family members and friends expressing concern about your behavior. I read the witness statements in disbelief. My Aunt Carol claimed I'd called her at 3 in the morning, crying and talking about joining Zara. A neighbor said I'd been standing in my yard at night, talking to myself. My own sister Brianna stated I'd threatened to destroy the family if they tried to help me. Every single statement was a lie. This is fraud, I said. Ms. Johnson, Ms. Martinez said in a soft voice, your parents are genuinely concerned. They just want to help you get the treatment you need while ensuring your daughter's trust is protected. Protected? They want to spend it on a wedding. Attorney Foster exchanged glances with Ms. Martinez. See, statements like that are exactly why we're here. You're making accusations against family members who are trying to help you. It's not an accusation. It's the truth. According to your parents, you've become fixated on conspiracy theories. You believe everyone is plotting against you. I felt the trap closing around me. Every word I said would be used as evidence of my mental instability. If I defended myself, I was paranoid. If I stayed quiet, I was withdrawn and depressed. I want to call my lawyer, I said. Of course, Attorney Foster said. But first, we need you to come with us for a mental health evaluation. It's court-ordered. He showed me another paper. Emergency psychiatric hold, signed by Judge Williams. My parents had gotten a judge to sign an order forcing me into a psych evaluation. What if I refuse? Then we'll have to call the police to escort you. I looked at Ms. Martinez. Do you have children? Yes, I do. How would you feel if someone tried to steal your child's money 3 days after their funeral? Her expression softened slightly. Ms. Johnson, I understand you're grieving. But your family isn't trying to steal anything. They're trying to ensure the money is used appropriately while you get the help you need. Did they tell you about the wedding? What wedding? Attorney Foster shifted uncomfortably. Ms. Johnson, you're doing exactly what your parents said you'd do, making accusations and… My sister is getting married in 3 months. The venue costs $200,000. They want to use my daughter's trust fund to pay for it. They skipped her funeral to attend the engagement party. Ms. Martinez looked confused. Mr. Foster, was there mention of a wedding in the paperwork? The specifics don't matter, he said quickly. What matters is Ms. Johnson's mental state and her ability to make rational decisions about nearly $1 million. $1 million. The way he said it made it clear this was all about money. I want to see your credentials, I said to Ms. Martinez. She handed me her badge and ID. Everything looked legitimate. And yours, I said to Foster. He gave me a business card. Foster and Associates, Family Law. I pulled out my phone and called the number on the card. It went straight to a disconnected line message. Your number doesn't work, I said. Oh, we're switching phone systems this week. You can reach me at… You're not a real lawyer. Foster's face went red. Ms. Johnson, your paranoid delusions are exactly what we're talking about. You don't trust anyone. You think everyone is lying to you. But Ms. Martinez was looking at him differently now. Mr. Foster, can I see your bar certification? I don't carry it with me. Then I think we need to reschedule this evaluation until we can verify everyone's credentials. Foster packed up his papers quickly. This is highly irregular. The court order is clear. The court order can wait until tomorrow, Ms. Martinez said firmly. Ms. Johnson, I'll be back tomorrow morning with proper documentation and a verified attorney. Until then, please don't leave town. After they left, I called the courthouse to check on the emergency psychiatric hold. The clerk had no record of any such orders signed by Judge Williams. In fact, Judge Williams had been on vacation all week. The fake court order was still sitting on my coffee table. I called Jake immediately. They tried to have me committed with fake documents, I told him. What? I explained everything, the fake medical records, the false witness statements, the phony lawyer, the forged court order. Jesus, Simone. This isn't just about the money anymore. This is criminal. I know. They're planning to have me declared incompetent, gain control of the trust, and then what? Keep me locked up? Have me disappeared? We need to call the police. With what evidence? They took all their fake papers when they left. It's my word against theirs. Jake was quiet for a moment. We need help. Real help. That afternoon, I drove to the law office of Rebecca Stone, the attorney who'd handled Jake's grandfather's estate. She was the one who'd set up Zara's trust in the first place. They're trying to steal $1 million from a dead child, I told her after explaining everything. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. This is more serious than theft, Simone. Identity fraud, forgery, impersonation of government officials. Your parents could go to prison for this. Good. But first, we need to protect you and the trust. They're not going to stop. If anything, they'll get more desperate. She was right. That evening, my parents called from an unknown number. The wedding is in 11 weeks. Dad said without preamble. Brianna has made commitments. People are flying in from all over the country. Then she shouldn't have planned a wedding with money she didn't have. That money belongs to the family now. No, it belongs to Zara's memory. Zara is dead. Mom's voice came through the speaker. Dead children don't need money. Living family members do. I hung up and immediately called Rebecca. They're not giving up, I told her. Then neither are we. Tomorrow we fight back. Rebecca's office felt like a war room. Papers covered every surface, and she'd called in her private investigator partner, Tony Martinez. Tony looked like he'd stepped out of a detective movie, worn leather jacket, 5 o'clock shadow, and eyes that missed nothing. Your parents are desperate, Tony said, spreading photos across Rebecca's desk. These aren't the actions of people who just want to help with a wedding. This is the behavior of people who are in serious trouble. The photos showed my parents' house, my sister's apartment, and several unfamiliar buildings. What kind of trouble? I asked. Rebecca opened a thick folder. Tony's been busy for the past 2 days. Your parents are broke. Worse than broke, they're drowning. Tony pointed to the first set of documents. Your father owes $150,000 to 3 different casinos. He's been gambling heavily for the past year, mostly on sports betting apps and poker games. The papers showed debts to Caesar's Palace, MGM Grand, and some place called Lucky Dragon Casino. But those were just the official debts. He also owes money to private lenders, Tony continued. These aren't bank loans. These are the kind of people who don't take no for an answer. I felt sick. How much? Another $200,000. Maybe more. Rebecca pulled out credit card statements. Your mother hasn't been idle either. Look at these charges. The statements showed shopping sprees at high-end stores, expensive dinners, jewelry purchases, spa treatments. In the past 6 months, Mom had charged over $80,000 to credit cards in her name, Dad's name, and several other names I didn't recognize. Who are these other people? I asked, pointing to unfamiliar names on the cards. Tony grimaced. Your deceased grandparents. What? Your mother has been opening credit cards using your grandparents' social security numbers and personal information, even though they died 3 years ago. My mouth fell open. That's identity theft. Multiple counts of identity theft, Rebecca corrected. And it gets worse. Tony showed me photos of Brianna's apartment building. Your sister isn't just planning a wedding. She's been living way above her means too. That apartment costs $4,000 a month. She drives a BMW that costs more than most people make in a year. Her credit card debt is over $50,000. How do they pay for any of this? They don't, Rebecca said. Look at these foreclosure notices. She handed me legal papers. My parents' house, the house I grew up in, was in foreclosure. They were 3 months behind on mortgage payments and owed over $15,000 in back payments. They're losing everything, I whispered. Which is why they need Zara's trust, Tony said. It's not about a wedding. It's about survival. Rebecca pulled out more documents. Here's what we think happened. Your father's gambling debts got out of control. Your mother started using credit fraud to cover their basic expenses. Brianna saw her parents living this lifestyle and decided she wanted the same thing, not realizing it was all borrowed money. But why target Zara's trust now? Tony answered. Because they knew she was dying. They had time to plan this whole scheme. The fake medical records, the phony lawyer, the forged court papers. None of that was thrown together last minute. I thought about the timeline. They started planning this while she was still alive. Probably months ago when her diagnosis became terminal. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. While I was reading bedtime stories to my dying daughter, my parents were researching how to steal her money. Rebecca leaned forward. There's more, Simone. We think they've done this before. What do you mean? Your Uncle Pete died 2 years ago, right? I nodded. Pete was Dad's older brother. He'd had a heart attack and left behind a small estate. That estate disappeared, Tony said. About $75,000 that was supposed to go to Pete's stepchildren. Your parents were executors and somehow the money just vanished into estate expenses. I remembered the family drama around Uncle Pete's death. His stepchildren had been furious, accusing my parents of stealing their inheritance. The family had taken sides, and eventually the stepchildren just gave up fighting. They stole from Uncle Pete's kids? We can't prove it yet, but the pattern fits. They gained control of someone else's money through family relationships, then drained the accounts. Rebecca showed me bank records. Here's the scariest part. 3 days after your parents visited you with those fake papers, they made a $50,000 deposit to Brianna's wedding venue. Where did they get $50,000? Tony and Rebecca exchanged glances. We think they took out loans against the future trust money, Tony said. They're so confident they'll get control of Zara's trust that they've already borrowed against it. I felt dizzy. What happens if they can't access the trust? They're ruined. And worse, the people they owe money to aren't patient. Some of these lenders have enforcement methods. Rebecca handed me photos of my parents' house taken that morning. The windows had been broken. Someone had spray-painted "Pay Up" on the front door. This happened last night, Tony said. Your father's gambling debts are being called in. I stared at the photos of my childhood home vandalized and damaged. Despite everything my parents had done, seeing their house like this was shocking. Are they in danger? Probably, Tony admitted. Which makes them even more desperate to get that trust money. Rebecca organized all the papers into neat stacks. Here's what we're dealing with. Your parents are facing financial ruin, criminal charges, and possibly physical harm from the people they owe money to. Your sister has built her entire lifestyle on borrowed money and credit fraud. And all of them see Zara's trust as their salvation. But they can't legally access it, right? Not legally. But desperate people do illegal things. They've already committed multiple felonies trying to gain control of that money. They're not going to stop. Tony leaned back in his chair. The question is, how far are they willing to go? As if answering his question, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Johnson? The voice was unfamiliar and cold. This is Detective Ray Collins with the police department. We need to talk to you about some very serious allegations. My blood went cold. What allegations? Your family has filed a report claiming you've threatened to harm yourself and others. We need you to come in for questioning immediately. I looked at Rebecca and Tony. They were already reaching for their coats. I'll be there with my attorney, I said. Ma'am, this is just a routine interview. I'll be there with my attorney, I repeated and hung up. Rebecca was already heading for the door. They're escalating. If they can't get you declared mentally incompetent, they're going to try to get you arrested. As we drove to the police station, I realized this was no longer just about money. My parents were fighting for their lives, and they were willing to destroy mine to save themselves. Detective Collins looked tired and skeptical as he read through the stack of papers my family had provided. Rebecca sat beside me in the small interview room, taking notes while the detective flipped through witness statements, photos, and what appeared to be printed text messages. According to your parents, Detective Collins said, you've been sending threatening messages to your sister about her wedding. You've also been calling family members at all hours, making accusations and threats. He showed me printouts of text messages supposedly from my phone number to Brianna's number. I'll destroy your wedding if it's the last thing I do. You don't deserve happiness while my daughter is dead. I have ways to make sure you never see a penny of that money. You'll regret celebrating while I was burying my child. I stared at the messages. I didn't send these. The phone records show they came from your number. Rebecca leaned forward. Detective, we'd like to examine those phone records ourselves. Text messages can be easily faked, especially when someone has access to personal information. Detective Collins looked between us. Your parents seem genuinely concerned about your mental state, Ms. Johnson. They've provided medical records showing. Those medical records are forgeries, Rebecca interrupted. We've contacted every doctor listed, and none of them have any record of treating my client. That's unusual. Rebecca pulled out her own folder. What's unusual is the level of fraud being committed here. My client's parents have been using deceased relatives' identities to open credit accounts, they've attempted to impersonate government officials, and they've forged legal documents. She spread Tony's evidence across the table. The detective's expression changed as he looked at the casino debts, credit card fraud, and photos of the vandalized house. This is quite a collection, he admitted. There's more, I said. I pulled out my phone and showed him screenshots from Brianna's social media. These show my sister celebrating her engagement during my daughter's funeral. Look at the timestamps. Detective Collins studied the photos, then looked at the dates on the police report my parents had filed. They filed this complaint the day after the funeral, he noted. The same day they were demanding access to my daughter's trust fund for wedding expenses, I added. Rebecca handed him bank statements. Detective, these people aren't concerned family members. They're desperate criminals who see my client's grief as an opportunity. Detective Collins spent 20 minutes reviewing all our evidence. Finally he looked up. Ms. Johnson, I'm going to be honest with you. This case is a mess. Your parents have filed serious allegations, but the evidence you've provided raises questions about their motives. What does that mean for me? It means I'm not arresting you today. But I am going to investigate these fraud claims you've made. If even half of this is true, your parents are looking at multiple felony charges. We left the police station feeling cautiously optimistic. But as we walked to Rebecca's car, my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, one after another. Don't answer, Rebecca advised. Let them go to voicemail. By the time we reached her office, I had 17 missed calls and 12 voicemail messages. We listened to them together. The first few were from extended family members I barely knew. Simone, this is your cousin Mark. Your parents told us you're having a breakdown and threatening people. We think you should check yourself into a hospital before you do something you'll regret. Hi honey, it's Aunt Dorothy. We're all so worried about you. Brianna is devastated that you're trying to ruin her wedding. Please get help. Simone, this is your father's business partner, Jim. I heard about your situation. If you need someone to manage that trust fund while you recover, I'd be happy to help. The messages got worse from there. People I hadn't spoken to in years were calling to lecture me about family responsibility and getting mental health treatment. They're building a narrative, Rebecca said. making it look like the entire family is concerned about your mental state. The last message was from my mother, and her tone was different. Colder. Simone, you've embarrassed this family enough. We tried to help you, but you're determined to be selfish and destructive. Fine. But understand this, we will get that money with or without your cooperation. Brianna deserves her happiness, and we won't let your grief destroy her future. You have 24 hours to transfer the trust funds, or we'll take more serious action. That sounds like a threat, I said. Rebecca was already rewinding the message. It is a threat. We're keeping this. That evening, Tony called with an update. I've been watching your parents' house, he said. They had visitors today. 3 men in an expensive car. The conversation looked heated. The people they owe money to? Probably. And there's something else. Brianna canceled her wedding venue. What? She canceled it this afternoon and demanded her deposit back. But here's the thing, she paid that deposit with a check that bounced. The venue is threatening to sue her for fraud. I felt a moment of satisfaction, then guilt for feeling satisfied. So the wedding is off? Not exactly. She immediately booked a different venue. Much more expensive. The Fairmont Resort in Napa Valley. Rebecca grabbed the phone. Tony, how much more expensive? The reception alone is $300,000. With everything else, flowers, photography, catering, we're looking at over $500,000 for this wedding. I sat down hard. $500,000? For one day. It gets worse, Tony continued. She's told the vendors that payment is guaranteed from a family trust. She's using Zara's trust as collateral for the entire wedding. Rebecca and I looked at each other. Can she do that? I asked. Not legally, Rebecca said. But if the vendors believe her, they'll provide services expecting to be paid. When the money doesn't come through, they'll sue everyone involved, including you as the trust administrator. My phone rang. Brianna's name flashed on the screen. Answer it, Rebecca said. Let's hear what she has to say. I put the call on speaker. Simone? Finally. I've been trying to reach you all day. I've been busy defending myself against false police reports. Brianna's tone shifted. Look, I know you're upset about Mom and Dad's approach, but this is getting out of hand. I've already committed to vendors for my wedding. Real people with real businesses who are counting on payment. Then you shouldn't have made commitments with money you don't have. It's not just my money, Simone. It's family money. Zara would have wanted her aunt to be happy. Don't you dare use my daughter's name to justify your greed. Greed? Brianna's voice got louder. I'm trying to build a life here. I'm trying to start a family with the man I love. That money is just sitting there doing nothing. That money is Zara's legacy. Zara is dead. She doesn't need a legacy. I need a future. The line went quiet. Rebecca was scribbling notes, capturing everything. I can't believe you just said that, I whispered. Brianna's voice softened, trying a different approach. Simone, I didn't mean it like that. I'm just stressed. The wedding is in 10 weeks and I've already spent so much money. The venue needs final payment in 7 days, or they'll cancel everything. Good. Please don't do this. I'm begging you. I'll pay the money back after the wedding. Mark makes good money at his job. What job? Silence. Brianna, what job does Mark have? He's between positions right now. But he's got some great opportunities lined up. Rebecca wrote unemployed fiancé on her notepad. So you're planning a $500,000 wedding while unemployed, using money from your dead niece's trust fund? When you put it like that, it sounds bad. It is bad. Brianna started crying. Simone, please. Everyone's going to think I'm a failure if I cancel this wedding. Mark's family, my friends, everyone at work. I've already sent invitations. People have bought plane tickets. That's your problem, not mine. Fine, she said, and her voice turned cold again. But don't think this is over. Mom and Dad aren't the only ones who can play hardball. She hung up. Rebecca looked at her notes. What did she mean by that? We found out the next morning. Tony called at 6 a.m. Turn on the news, he said. Channel 7. I grabbed the remote and flipped to the local morning show. The headline read, Local woman refuses to help sister after niece's death. My stomach dropped. The reporter was standing outside my house. This is a story about family, grief, and $1 million inheritance that's tearing one local family apart. Brianna Thompson contacted our newsroom yesterday with a heartbreaking tale of a sister who's using her daughter's death to deny family members basic support during a time of celebration. The screen showed a photo of Brianna in her wedding dress, looking sad and beautiful. Miss Thompson's sister, Simone Johnson, recently lost her 8-year-old daughter to cancer. But instead of coming together as a family, Ms. Johnson has reportedly become hostile and paranoid, threatening family members and refusing to share her daughter's substantial trust fund. They showed a clip of Brianna being interviewed. "I just want my sister to get help," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "She's making accusations against our parents, claiming they're trying to steal money. She's threatened to destroy my wedding. I'm scared of what she might do next." The reporter continued, "The trust fund, worth nearly $1 million, was set up for the deceased child's future. Now that money sits unused while family members struggle with medical bills and other expenses." Medical bills? What medical bills? The story concluded with a plea for viewers to call if they had information about dangerous behavior from someone matching my description. They had just painted me as a mentally unstable woman hoarding money from my own family. Rebecca was already on her phone. "I'm calling the station. This is defamation." But the damage was done. My phone was ringing nonstop with calls from reporters, neighbors, and strangers who'd seen the story. By noon, there were news vans parked outside my house. I was trapped inside while my family told lies about me on television. "They've declared war," I told Rebecca. "So be it. Let's fight back." The harassment started immediately after the news story aired. My doorbell rang every 10 minutes with reporters asking for interviews, neighbors wanting to gossip, and strangers who'd seen the story and felt compelled to share their opinions. "You should be ashamed of yourself," shouted an elderly woman I'd never seen before. "That poor girl just wants her wedding." I stopped answering the door. Tony had to escort me out the back way just to meet with Rebecca at her office. Even there, reporters were waiting. "They've really done it now," Rebecca said, showing me printouts of social media posts. "The story has gone viral. Everyone's an expert on what you should do with Zara's money." The Facebook comments were brutal. "Selfish woman using her daughter's death to hurt family. Just give your sister the money. She deserves happiness. Mental illness is no excuse for destroying other people's lives. Someone should call social services on this woman." But mixed in with the hate were some supportive messages. "Something doesn't add up about this story. Why didn't the grandparents attend the funeral? This sounds like the family is taking advantage of a grieving mother. I've been following this story and the timeline is suspicious." Rebecca had printed out dozens of comments. "Public opinion is split, but the narrative your family created is powerful. Grieving mother loses her mind and hoards money while refusing to help family. What can we do?" "Tony's been busy," she said. "Show her what you found." Tony opened his laptop. "I've been digging deeper into your sister's finances. Remember how she claimed Mark has a good job with opportunities lined up?" "Yeah." "Mark Anderson, age 29, unemployed for 8 months. Before that, he was fired from his sales job for falsifying expense reports. Before that, fired from a restaurant for stealing from the register." The screen showed Mark's employment history, credit report, and even some police records. "He's got a pattern of financial crimes," Tony continued. "Small stuff mostly but consistent. And here's the interesting part, he's been dating your sister for exactly 4 months. 4 months. I thought about the engagement party photos. But she said they'd been together for over a year. Another lie. They met on a dating app in January. By March, he'd moved into her apartment. By April, they were engaged." Rebecca leaned forward. "What was happening in April?" I thought back. Zara's cancer got worse. The doctors said she had maybe 6 months. So Mark proposed right when it became clear there'd be a trust fund to inherit soon. Tony pulled up more documents. Gets better. Mark's been married twice before. Both times he married women with money or valuable assets. Both marriages ended with him taking half of everything in divorce settlements. He's a con artist. Exactly. And your sister is his mark. But she's broke too, so he needs this trust money to make the con worthwhile. Rebecca organized the papers. Here's what I think happened. Mark researched your sister before they started dating. He knew about your family, your daughter's condition, and the trust fund. He positioned himself to marry into money just as it became available. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I was tired of avoiding calls. "Hello? Is this Simone Johnson?" The voice was professional but concerned. "Yes. This is Dr. Patricia Willis from Channel 7 News. I'm a family therapist, and I saw the story about your situation. I'd like to help." "Help how?" "I think you're being manipulated by your family, and I'd like to offer you a platform to tell your side of the story. Can we meet?" Rebecca was shaking her head. but something about the woman's voice felt genuine. "Can you come to my lawyer's office?" I asked. An hour later, Dr. Willis sat across from us with a camera operator and a producer. She was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and gray hair. "Tell me about your daughter," she began. For the first time in weeks, someone wanted to hear about Zara instead of the money. I talked about her love of butterflies, her artwork, her bravery during treatment. Dr. Willis listened without judgment. "And your family didn't attend her funeral?" "They were at my sister's engagement party instead." Dr. Willis looked genuinely shocked. "At the same time?" "Yes. I have photos of them toasting with champagne while I was throwing dirt on my daughter's grave." The camera operator kept filming as I showed the photos from social media. "Simone, I've been a family therapist for 30 years and I've never seen anything like this. This isn't normal family behavior, even during times of stress." She turned to Rebecca. "Can you tell me about the legal situation?" Rebecca explained the fake medical records, the forged court documents, the identity theft using deceased relatives' names. "This is criminal behavior," Dr. Willis said. "These people aren't grieving family members asking for help. They're criminals targeting a vulnerable woman." The interview lasted 2 hours. Dr. Willis asked tough questions but fair ones. She wanted to understand the timeline, the money, the relationships. "What do you want people to know?" she asked at the end. "That my daughter mattered. Her life had value. Her death had meaning. And I won't let greedy people turn her memory into cash for a party." That evening, Dr. Willis's story aired. It was completely different from the first report. New information has come to light about the Johnson Family Trust Fund story we reported yesterday. After investigating further, we've discovered evidence of fraud, identity theft, and criminal behavior by the family members requesting access to the funds. They showed documents Tony had found, photos of the vandalized house, evidence of the gambling debts. Ms. Johnson's parents owe over $300,000 to various creditors and have been using deceased relatives' identities to obtain credit. The sister planning the expensive wedding is engaged to a man with a history of financial crimes and marriage fraud. The story painted a completely different picture. Instead of a mentally ill woman hoarding money, it showed a grieving mother protecting her daughter's legacy from criminal family members. My phone started ringing again, but this time the calls were supportive. "I'm so sorry for what your family is putting you through. You're doing the right thing protecting your daughter's memory. Don't let them win." But along with support came escalation. My parents called from yet another unknown number. "You've really done it now," Dad said. "Making us look like criminals on television." "You are criminals. We're family. And family protects family." "Then why didn't you protect Zara?" "We're losing our house because of you." Mom screamed in the background. "Those people came back today. They broke our windows again." "That's not my problem." "It will be your problem when they come for you next." The line went dead. Rebecca immediately called Detective Collins to report the threat. Tony called an hour later. "We've got problems. Mark and Brianna just showed up at your parents' house with a U-Haul truck. They're moving stuff out." "What kind of stuff?" "Furniture, boxes, suitcases. Looks like they're all running away together." I felt a chill. Running where? That's what worries me. People who are planning to disappear usually try to grab whatever money they can first. Rebecca was already reaching for her phone. "I'm calling the bank. We need to put extra security on that trust account." But when she called, the news was worse than we expected. "Miss Stone, we've had some unusual activity on the account today. Someone attempted to make a large withdrawal using what appeared to be a court order. Did you approve it?" "No, we called the court to verify and they said the order was fraudulent. But whoever tried to use it had very detailed account information." Rebecca looked at me with worry. "They're getting desperate. And desperate people do desperate things." That night I didn't sleep. Every sound outside made me jump. Every car that drove by could be them coming back. At 3 in the morning my doorbell rang. Through the peephole I saw Brianna standing alone on my porch. She looked terrible, hair messy, makeup smeared, clothes wrinkled. "Simone, please," she called through the door. "I need to talk to you. It's important." Against my better judgment, I opened the door with the chain still attached. "What do you want?" "They're gone," she whispered. "Mom, Dad, and Mark. They took everything and left me behind." I stared at Brianna through the crack in the door. She looked genuinely distressed, shaking, crying, mascara streaked down her cheeks. "What do you mean they left you behind? Can I please come in? I'm scared." Every instinct told me not to trust her, but she looked so broken that I undid the chain and let her inside. She collapsed on my couch and started sobbing. They used me, Simone. They used me just like they were using you. What are you talking about? The wedding, the money, all of it. It was never about my happiness. It was about Mark's plan. I sat across from her, keeping my distance. What plan? Brianna wiped her nose with a tissue. Mark wasn't just some guy I met. He sought me out. He knew about our family, about Zara's trust, about everything. I know. My investigator found that out. Her eyes widened. You hired an investigator? Of course I did. You people tried to have me committed with fake medical records. Brianna looked confused. What fake medical records? I studied her face. She seemed genuinely surprised. Your parents brought a fake social worker and a fake lawyer to my house. They had forged medical records claiming I was suicidal. I didn't know about that. You didn't know about the fake court order either? What court order? I got my laptop and showed her photos of all the forged documents. Brianna's face went white as she looked at them. Oh my God, she whispered. They really did this? You didn't know? I knew they were desperate about money, but I thought they were just being pushy. I didn't know they were committing crimes. I wanted to believe her, but trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Tell me about Mark, I said. Brianna's face crumpled. He played me perfectly. He made me feel special, beautiful, wanted. He said he couldn't wait to start our life together. But yesterday, after your story aired on TV, everything changed. He started asking detailed questions about the trust fund. How much money exactly, what bank, who had access, all of it. She pulled out her phone and showed me text messages. Mark, we need that trust money now. My contacts can help us access it. Brianna, what contacts? Mark, people who know how to handle these situations. But we need to move fast. Brianna, this doesn't feel right. Mark, don't be stupid. Your sister is never going to give us the money willingly. We have to take it. Take it how? I asked. That's when I found out about his real plan. He wasn't trying to marry me for love. He was planning to marry me, get power of attorney over my finances, then use our marriage to claim partial ownership of family assets. Including the trust? Especially the trust. He had papers drawn up claiming that as Zara's aunt, I had inheritance rights that superseded your control as the administrator. I felt sick. That's not how trusts work. I know that now. But he convinced Mom and Dad it would work. He said his lawyer could make it happen. His lawyer? Brianna laughed bitterly. The same fake lawyer who came to your house. Mark hired him to play different roles depending on what they needed. The scope of the con was staggering. Mark hadn't just targeted my sister. He'd orchestrated an entire scheme involving fake legal documents, identity theft, and fraud. Where are they now? Gone. They loaded everything valuable into a truck last night and left. Mark took my jewelry, my laptop, even my car. He said they were going somewhere safe until the legal issues got sorted out. And they didn't take you? Brianna started crying again. He said I was a liability now. That I knew too much and couldn't be trusted to keep quiet. I studied her face. She seemed genuinely hurt and betrayed, but I'd been fooled before. Why should I believe you? Because I brought proof. She pulled a tablet out of her purse. Mark left this behind by accident. It has all his real plans on it. The tablet was full of documents, photos, and communications that painted a complete picture of the con. Mark had been researching our family for months before he even met Brianna. He had detailed financial information about all of us, including bank account numbers, social security numbers, and even Zara's medical records. How did he get all this information? He had help, Brianna said. Look at this. She showed me email exchanges between Mark and someone named Tommy K. The emails discussed surveillance on our family, ways to access private records, and strategies for gaining legal control of assets. Who's Tommy K? Mark's partner. They've done this before. The emails talk about other families they've targeted. I scrolled through months of communications. Mark and Tommy had identified at least 6 other families dealing with terminal illnesses, deaths, or other tragedies. They'd steal identities, create fake legal documents, and manipulate grieving family members into giving them access to money. We weren't their first victims, I whispered. No. And we wouldn't have been their last. I found a folder labeled Johnson Family Final Phase. It contained detailed plans for what they'd intended to do after gaining control of the trust. They were going to disappear with all of it, I said, reading through the documents. The wedding was just a distraction. Once they had access to the money, they would have taken everything and vanished. Brianna nodded. That's why they left me behind. I'm evidence of their crime now. One document showed wire transfer instructions to offshore accounts. Another showed fake identities they'd planned to use. They had thought of everything. We need to call the police, I said. They won't believe me. I was part of it even if I didn't know the real plan. I'll probably go to jail too. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. For the first time in years, she seemed like the person I remembered from our childhood. Scared, vulnerable, and genuinely sorry. Brianna, why didn't you come to Zara's funeral? She started crying harder. Because I was selfish and shallow and horrible. Mark convinced me that engagement parties were about the future and funerals were about the past. He said I should focus on my happiness instead of dwelling on sadness. That's not an excuse. I know, and I hate myself for it. I should have been there for you. I should have been there for Zara. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sun was starting to rise. What happens now? Brianna asked. I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the attempts to steal from my daughter's memory. But I also thought about family, forgiveness, and second chances. Now we call the police and tell them everything. We give them all of Mark's files and help them track down everyone involved. Even if it means I go to jail? Even if it means you go to jail. But Brianna? Yeah. After we deal with the legal stuff, if you really want to make things right, there might be a way. She looked up hopefully. Zara's Trust is going to become a foundation to help other families dealing with childhood cancer. If you really want to honor your niece's memory, you could help me run it. You'd let me do that? After everything I did? People make mistakes, especially when they're being manipulated by criminals. What matters is what you do next. Brianna hugged me for the first time in years. It felt strange but also familiar, like remembering how to ride a bike. I want to make it right, she whispered. I want to help other families so they don't go through what we went through. I hugged her back. Then let's start by making sure Mark and his partner never hurt anyone else. As we called Detective Collins to report everything we'd learned, I realized this nightmare was finally starting to end. But there was still work to do before justice would be served. Detective Collins arrived with 2 other officers and a federal agent named Sarah Kim. The tablet Brianna had brought contained enough evidence to launch multiple investigations. This is bigger than identity theft, Agent Kim explained as she scrolled through Mark's files. We're looking at organized fraud, money laundering, and what appears to be a multi-state operation targeting grieving families. The Tommy K emails had led them to Thomas Kowalski, a man with an extensive criminal record who specialized in document forgery and identity theft. Together, Mark and Tommy had run similar cons in 3 other states. How many families did they hurt? I asked. We're still counting, Agent Kim said. But at least 12 that we know of. They targeted families dealing with death, divorce, or medical crises. People who were too overwhelmed to spot the red flags. While the federal investigation continued, my parents remained missing. They'd maxed out every credit card, emptied their bank accounts, and disappeared with Mark. But their absence didn't stop the legal proceedings they'd started. The guardianship petition is still active, Rebecca explained. Even though your parents fled, the court has to officially dismiss their claims. The hearing was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Rebecca warned me it might be emotional. Their lawyer, the real one this time, is going to argue that your parents' desperation proves you should have helped them financially. He'll try to make you look cold and unfeeling. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Judge Patricia Morrison sat behind an imposing wooden bench while lawyers shuffled papers at their tables. I sat with Rebecca, while the opposing table remained empty. Where are the petitioners? Judge Morrison asked. Their attorney, a nervous-looking man named David Walsh, stood up. Your Honor, my clients have been forced to leave the jurisdiction due to threats related to this case. Threats from whom? Various creditors who are pursuing collection of debts. My clients feared for their safety. Judge Morrison looked skeptical. So they've fled rather than appear in court? They've relocated temporarily for security reasons. Rebecca stood up. Your Honor, the petitioners didn't flee because of safety concerns. They fled because they're wanted for questioning in multiple fraud investigations. She handed the judge copies of the criminal complaints that had been filed. Judge Morrison read through them with growing concern. Mr. Walsh, are you aware that your clients are under investigation for identity theft, fraud, and forgery? The lawyer looked uncomfortable. Your Honor, those are merely allegations. Allegations supported by substantial evidence, including forged court documents that were presented in my own courtroom. Rebecca presented all the evidence we'd gathered, the fake medical records, the phony court order, the identity theft, the gambling debts. Your Honor, This guardianship petition was never about protecting my client. It was part of an elaborate scheme to steal nearly $1 million from a deceased child's trust fund. Judge Morrison studied the evidence for what felt like hours. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Walsh, I'm dismissing this petition with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into how these forged documents made it into my courtroom. Your Honor, my clients genuinely believed. Your clients forged a court order bearing my signature. That's not a mistake, Mr. Walsh. That's a felony. The judge turned to me. Ms. Johnson, I want to apologize on behalf of this court. You've been subjected to a level of fraud and manipulation that has no place in our legal system. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm also ordering the clerk to flag the trust account with additional security measures. No access will be granted without multiple forms of identification and court supervision. As we left the courthouse, Rebecca seemed pleased but cautious. We've won this battle, but the war isn't over. Your parents are still out there and they're getting more desperate by the day. She was right. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number with a Florida area code. Simone. Mom's voice was strained and shaky. We need to talk. Where are you? That doesn't matter. What matters is that you're destroying this family. The police came to our hotel looking for us. We had to leave everything behind. Good. You should be in jail. We're your parents. You can't just abandon family. You abandoned me when you skipped Zara's funeral for a champagne party. Dad's voice came on the line. Simone, we made mistakes. We admit that. But we can work this out. Transfer $50,000 to help us get back on our feet, and we'll disappear forever. 50,000? Even now you're trying to steal from Zara. It's not stealing. It's survival. Those people Mark owed money to, they think we know where he is. They're hunting us. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. That's not my problem. It will be your problem when they realize you control the money they thought Mark was going to get. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? Mark borrowed money against that trust, Simone. He promised people they'd get paid when he married Brianna. Now that he's gone, they're going to come looking for their money. The line went dead. I immediately called Rebecca and Tony. They're saying Mark borrowed money from dangerous people using the trust as collateral, I explained. Tony was already typing on his laptop. Let me check something. Mark's communications mentioned owing money to investors, but I didn't dig deep enough into who they were. 20 minutes later, Tony's face was grim. We've got a problem. Mark borrowed $200,000 from a group that specializes in aggressive collection methods. He told them he'd have access to $1 million trust within 3 months. But he never had access to the trust. They don't know that. As far as they're concerned, Mark Anderson was going to marry into money, and now he's vanished. They're going to want their money from somewhere. Rebecca was already on her phone with Detective Collins and Agent Kim. We need protection, she told them. The fraud case just became a threat to my client's safety. Within hours, I had federal marshals parked outside my house. The trust fund that was supposed to secure my daughter's future had made me a target for criminals I'd never met. But I wasn't going to run or hide. I'd already lost too much to let fear control my life. What's our next move? I asked Rebecca. We finish this. We make sure everyone involved faces justice, and we protect that trust so it can actually help people. How? By turning the whole thing public. We expose everyone involved, tell the complete story, and make it impossible for anyone to target you quietly. That night, Dr. Willis came back with her camera crew. This time, we told the entire story, the con, the fake documents, the missing parents, even the threats from Mark's creditors. This is about more than one family's money, I told the camera. This is about protecting vulnerable people from predators who target grief and tragedy. The story aired the next evening, complete with photos of Mark, Tommy, and my parents. Tips started pouring in immediately, people who'd seen them, worked with them, or been targeted by similar scams. Within 48 hours, the FBI had arrested Tommy Kowalski in Nevada. Mark was found in Arizona, living under a fake name. My parents were located in Florida, hiding in a cheap motel. The legal system finally had all the players in custody. But even with everyone arrested, I knew the real work was just beginning. I had to decide what to do with Zara's money, and I had to rebuild relationships with the family members worth saving. The phone call started at 6 in the morning. Detective Collins, Agent Kim, Rebecca, and Tony all calling with updates as the arrests happened across multiple states. We got them all, Agent Kim reported. Mark Anderson was arrested in Phoenix under the name Michael Adams. Thomas Kowalski was picked up in Las Vegas trying to board a plane to Mexico. Your parents were found in Fort Lauderdale. By noon, all four were in federal custody facing charges of fraud, identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy. Mark and Tommy faced additional charges for their previous cons in other states. What happens now? I asked Rebecca. Now they face the consequences. Federal fraud charges carry serious prison time, especially with multiple victims across state lines. The media coverage was intense. Dr. Willis's investigative report had gone national, and suddenly everyone was talking about the funeral fraud case. Other families who'd been targeted came forward, creating a wave of evidence against Mark and Tommy's operation. But not all the attention was positive. Some people still believed my parents' original story about me being unstable and greedy. Just give your family the money, someone posted on social media. They're in jail because of your selfishness. This woman destroyed her own family over money, another comment read. The victim blaming was exhausting, but I tried to focus on the support messages too. You protected your daughter's legacy and exposed criminals. Thank you for fighting back. My family went through something similar after my father died. These predators target vulnerable people and we need more people like you to speak up. 3 weeks later, the plea hearings began. Mark and Tommy's lawyer had negotiated deals in exchange for information about other victims and criminal associates. Anderson gets 8 years federal prison, Rebecca told me after the hearing. Kowalski gets 10 years. They also have to pay restitution to all the families they defrauded. What about my parents? That's more complicated. They're claiming they were manipulated by Mark and didn't understand the extent of the crimes. I laughed bitterly. They forged medical records in my name. I know. The prosecutor is pushing for 3 to 5 years each, plus restitution. But their lawyer is arguing for probation and community service. The thought of my parents getting probation after everything they'd done made me furious. But Rebecca had more news. There's something else. The IRS has been investigating their tax returns for the past 5 years. Apparently, your father never reported his gambling winnings, and your mother claimed deductions for charitable donations that never happened. More fraud. More consequences. Even if they get minimal jail time for the trust fund scheme, they're looking at additional charges for tax evasion. While waiting for my parents' sentencing, I focused on the positive changes happening. The media attention had brought unexpected benefits. Families from around the country reached out, sharing their own stories of being targeted by similar scams. Dr. Willis introduced me to a woman named Angela Rodriguez whose family had been conned out of $300,000 after her husband's death. The scammer had used almost identical tactics: fake legal documents, pressure about being mentally unstable, threats about family loyalty. I gave them the money, Angela told me. I was so scared and confused and everyone kept saying I was being paranoid. I wish I'd fought back like you did. Angela and I started meeting regularly, comparing notes about the tactics these criminals used. We realized there was a pattern that could help other families identify and avoid similar scams. We should write a guide, Angela suggested. Something people can use to protect themselves when they're grieving and vulnerable. That's exactly what Zara's foundation should do. The foundation. I'd been thinking about it for weeks but hadn't taken concrete steps. Now, with criminal cases winding down and public attention focused on the issue, it felt like the right time to act. Rebecca helped me file the paperwork to establish the Zara Johnson Foundation for Family Protection. The mission was simple: educate families about financial scams targeting people during medical crises, deaths, and other traumatic events. The timing is perfect, Rebecca said. You've got public support, media attention, and nearly $1 million to work with. The foundation's first project was the protection guide Angela and I had discussed. We interviewed dozens of families who'd been targeted by scams, identifying common warning signs and tactics. Always be suspicious when someone pressures you to make financial decisions quickly during a crisis, I wrote in the introduction. Legitimate help comes with time to think and professional verification. Meanwhile, Brianna had been working with prosecutors as a cooperating witness. Her testimony about Mark's manipulation and the fake wedding plans had been crucial in securing his conviction. I know I can never undo the damage I caused, she told me one afternoon as we worked on foundation materials. But maybe I can help prevent other families from going through this. She'd been attending therapy and working part-time at a nonprofit that helped families navigate medical billing issues. The work seemed to give her purpose in a way her previous lifestyle never had. Do you miss the expensive apartment and designer clothes? I asked her. Sometimes, she admitted. But I don't miss feeling empty inside. I don't miss lying about who I was or what I could afford. Our relationship was slowly healing, but it would take time. Too much had happened to simply forget and move on. But working together on the foundation gave us a positive focus. The sentencing hearing for my parents was scheduled for a Thursday morning in November. I debated whether to attend, but ultimately decided I needed to see it through to the end. Judge Harrison's courtroom was packed with reporters and victims from other cases. My parents sat at the defendant's table looking older and smaller than I remembered. Mom had lost weight and Dad's hair had gone completely gray. Their lawyer made an impassioned plea about being grandparents who'd made mistakes while grieving their granddaughter's death. My clients were manipulated by more sophisticated criminals, he argued. They were victims themselves, preyed upon by Mark Anderson's scheme. The prosecutor wasn't buying it. The defendants didn't just participate in fraud, Your Honor. They initiated it. They created fake medical records, forged court documents, and attempted to have their own daughter declared mentally incompetent. This wasn't confusion or grief, this was calculated criminal behavior. When given the chance to speak, my father stood up slowly. Your Honor, I know we made terrible mistakes. We let money problems cloud our judgment. We trusted the wrong people. But we never meant to hurt our daughter or granddaughter's memory. Mom stood next to him, crying quietly. We're sorry, Simone, she said, looking directly at me. We're sorry for everything. I felt a mixture of sadness and anger. They were sorry, but only because they'd been caught. Only because they were facing prison time. Judge Harrison reviewed their files for several minutes before speaking. The defendants have shown a pattern of financial crimes spanning several years. They've defrauded family members, stolen from deceased relatives, and attempted to exploit their daughter's grief for financial gain. He paused, looking directly at my parents. However, I do believe they were influenced by Mr. Anderson's criminal organization. Therefore, I'm sentencing each defendant to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You will also pay full restitution to all victims and perform 500 hours of community service. 18 months. It seemed both too little and too much. Too little for the damage they'd caused, too much for people who used to be my family. As they were led away in handcuffs, Mom looked back at me one more time. I love you, she mouthed. I didn't respond. Love wasn't enough anymore. Actions mattered more than words. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed with questions about how I felt, whether I forgave my parents, what would happen to the foundation. Justice has been served, I said simply. Now we focus on helping other families protect themselves from similar crimes. That evening, Brianna and I sat in my kitchen working on foundation brochures. The house was quiet except for the sound of papers rustling and teacups being set down. Do you think they'll really change? Brianna asked. I don't know. Prison changes some people for the better. Others just become better criminals. What if they want a relationship when they get out? I thought about that. Then they'll have to prove they've changed. Words won't be enough anymore. Brianna nodded. I understand. I'm still trying to prove I've changed too. The foundation was officially launching in 2 weeks. We'd received donations from supporters who'd followed the case, and several major nonprofits had offered partnerships. The protection guide was being translated into multiple languages, and we were planning workshops for hospitals and hospices. Zara would be proud, Brianna said quietly. Yeah, I agreed. She would be. For the first time since losing my daughter, I felt like something good was coming from all the pain. The foundation would help families avoid the trauma we'd experienced. Criminals like Mark and Tommy would face consequences. And maybe, eventually, real healing could begin. 6 months after the sentencing, I stood in the conference room of the Zara Johnson Foundation, looking out at 30 social workers, hospital administrators, and family advocates who'd come for our first major training workshop. Predatory scams targeting grieving families have increased 300% in the past 5 years, I told the group. The criminals have gotten more sophisticated, but the warning signs remain consistent. Angela Rodriguez stood beside me, presenting statistics and case studies we'd compiled. Together, we documented over 200 cases of families being targeted during medical crises or after deaths. The key is early education, Angela explained. Families need to know about these scams before they become victims. After the workshop, a hospital social worker approached me. We've had 3 families in the past month who were contacted by supposed lawyers offering to help with estate issues, she said. Now I know these were probably scams. Did any of the families give them money? One did. About $15,000. But after your workshop today, I'm going to call the police and report it. Stories like that made all the work worthwhile. The foundation had directly helped dozens of families avoid scams, and indirectly protected countless others through education and awareness campaigns. Brianna had become the foundation's full-time operations manager. She coordinated with law enforcement, managed our database of reported scams, and helped victims navigate the legal system. "You've built something amazing," she told me as we cleaned up after the workshop. "Zara's legacy is going to protect families for years to come." The foundation now had partnerships with 200 hospitals across the country. Our protection guides were available in 7 languages, and we'd helped law enforcement identify and prosecute 12 new cases of family fraud. But the most meaningful moment came when we received a letter from a woman in Oregon. "My husband died of cancer last month," she wrote. 3 days after the funeral, a man contacted me claiming to be a lawyer who could help me access my husband's retirement account. He had detailed information about our finances and seemed legitimate. But I remembered seeing your story on the news and decided to verify his credentials before giving him any information. He was a fraud. You saved me from losing $80,000. Thank you for turning your tragedy into protection for others." I kept that letter in my office next to a photo of Zara. My parents had been released to a halfway house after serving 14 months. They'd both written letters asking to meet, but I wasn't ready. Maybe someday, but not yet. Forgiveness is a process, my therapist reminded me. It doesn't have to happen on anyone else's timeline. The therapy had helped me work through the complex emotions of losing Zara while simultaneously being betrayed by family. Grief and anger had intertwined in ways that took professional help to untangle. "I keep thinking about what kind of person Zara would have become," I told Dr. Sarah Chin during one session. "She was so kind, so generous. She would have wanted to help people." "She is helping people," Dr. Chin pointed out. "Through the foundation, through your work, through the awareness you've created." Jake had remained supportive throughout everything. He attended foundation events, helped with fundraising, and co-chaired our advisory board. "You know," he said one evening as we reviewed grant applications, "I think Zara would be impressed by how you've honored her memory." "I hope so. Some days I worry I'm just being stubborn about the money." "Stubborn?" Jake shook his head. "You protected our daughter's legacy from criminals. You turned her trust fund into something that helps other families. That's not stubborn, that's heroic." The foundation's first annual report showed impressive results. 89 families directly protected from scams. $2.3 million in attempted fraud prevented. 15 criminals arrested based on tips from our hotline. 200 healthcare facilities using our educational materials. 50,000 copies of our protection guide distributed. But beyond the numbers, there were the personal stories. Families who'd avoided devastating financial losses. Children who still had college funds because their parents recognized warning signs. Elderly people who kept their life savings because they knew to verify credentials before trusting strangers. The foundation had grown beyond what I'd imagined possible when I first thought about honoring Zara's memory. On the 1-year anniversary of Zara's death, I visited her grave with a different kind of update than I'd brought before. "Hey baby girl," I said, placing fresh butterflies on her headstone, artificial ones that wouldn't wilt. "We've had quite a year." I told her about the foundation, about the families we'd helped, about Brianna's transformation into someone who truly cared about helping others. "Your Aunt Brianna is different now," I said. "She's learning to find value in things that can't be bought. I think you'd like who she's becoming." The cemetery was peaceful, with afternoon sunlight filtering through the trees. Other families visited nearby graves, some leaving flowers, others just sitting quietly. "I miss you every day," I continued. "But I'm not just sad anymore. I'm proud of what we've built in your name. I'm proud that your money is helping families instead of funding a selfish party." A butterfly, a real one, landed on Zara's headstone for just a moment before flying away. I chose to take it as a good sign. That evening, Brianna and I worked late at the foundation office, preparing materials for a conference about financial crimes targeting vulnerable populations. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't brought you Mark's tablet that night?" Brianna asked. "You mean if you'd stayed loyal to them instead of doing the right thing?" "Yeah. I thought about it. Mark and Tommy would probably still be out there targeting other families. Mom and Dad would have eventually gotten caught for the identity theft and tax evasion, but maybe not for years. And we never would have learned to trust each other again. I'm glad I made the right choice, even if it was later than it should have been." Me too. Our relationship still had complicated moments. There were days when I remembered her absence at Zara's funeral and felt angry all over again. But there were also days when I saw her working with families in crisis and felt proud of who she'd chosen to become. The foundation kept us both busy with purpose-driven work. We traveled to conferences, testified before legislative committees about the need for stronger consumer protections, and consulted with law enforcement agencies developing protocols for family fraud cases. Next month we're launching the scholarship program, Brianna reminded me as we packed up for the evening. The scholarship program was my favorite new initiative. We were using foundation funds to provide college scholarships for children who'd lost parents to illness. It felt like a direct continuation of what Zara's Trust was originally meant to do, help children build their futures. 12 students the first year, I said. All kids who've dealt with serious family medical issues. Zara would love that her money is still helping kids go to college. As I locked up the office that night, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed. A year ago, I was a grieving mother being targeted by criminal family members. Now I was running a foundation that protected vulnerable families and honored my daughter's memory in meaningful ways. The pain of losing Zara would never completely go away. But that pain had been transformed into purpose, protection for others, and a legacy that would outlast all the people who tried to exploit it. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Saw the news article about the foundation winning the Consumer Protection Award. Zara would be so proud. She would be proud. And for the first time since losing her, that thought brought more joy than sadness. I drove home through the city where my daughter had lived her 8 precious years, past the hospital where she'd fought so bravely, past the school where she'd learned to read, past all the places that held her memory. But instead of just remembering what was lost, I was also celebrating what continued. Her kindness lived on in every family the foundation helped, her generous spirit continued through the scholarships we provided, and her love of butterflies had become our logo, a symbol of transformation and hope. The criminals had tried to turn Zara's death into their financial opportunity. Instead, her life became the foundation for protecting countless other families from similar predators. That was the best possible ending to the worst possible beginning.